Hey, and welcome, gurus, to this lesson where we're going to be doing a demo on Network Security Group Flowlogs. I'm Chase, one of your Azure training architects here at A Cloud Guru, a Pluralsight company. And as we start off this lesson, we're going to begin with a case study scenario that we're going to talk about to see what kind of environment setup we might expect when implementing Network Security Group Flowlogs. Now, I just want to say that this lesson comes with a caveat of that unfortunately, due to permissions inside the Azure Cloud Sandbox, we won't be able to complete this demo in the Azure Cloud Sandbox. So I'm going to walk you through setting it up. And if you'd like to follow along in your own account or a subscription that you have, please feel free to do so. Now, once we cover that case study scenario, we're going to get into the demo steps that are going to be involved in our demonstration, and then we're going to bring it back to the slides for some key takeaways. So let's get started with our Control-Alt-Suites case study scenario. For our organization inside of the Azure Cloud, we're going to have 3 virtual networks, a hub VNet and 2 spoke virtual networks. And specifically for this demo, we're going to be focusing on the hub VNet and the resources it contains. It will contain resources like a virtual machine and a hub subnet where that virtual machine exists, but we're going to focus on specifically the hub NSG so that we can capture through NSG flow logs the traffic that is going through that NSG on the hub subnet. And this will give us a better understanding of what traffic looks like and to what degree our security roles are effective. And these NSG flow logs will be sent to a storage account, which we'll need to create for this case study scenario so that we can have them for archive and review. Now, as we go through this, the demo steps that we're going to start off with are first, ensuring the required components, our NSG, our network watcher, Microsoft.Insights, and a storage account. Once we've ensured those required components, we're going to move into creating an NSG flow log and configuring it for a storage account so that it will send those logs and all the traffic that's going through the NSG into the NSG flow logs storage account. Then we're going to analyze the NSG flow logs very quickly and make a connection via SSH from Cloud Shell and see if we can find traffic in the NSG flow log JSON file that looks just like what our traffic was when we were connecting. All right, gurus, let's make our way into the Azure portal and not the Azure Cloud Sandbox this time and get started. All right, gurus, here we are inside of the Azure portal, and in this case, we're inside of a non-Azure Cloud Sandbox account. Now again, this is because this demo will not be supported in the Azure Cloud Sandbox due to permissions of Network Watcher. Now, as we see here, I've already run the setup file inside of Cloud Shell. So you'll just open up Cloud Shell, and then you'll come here, you'll grab this, you'll copy it, and this will be available in the resources of this video lesson. And you'll paste it into Cloud Shell. And before you paste it, you need to make sure that you set the resource group variable. So you'll set it to your RG name for your resource group, whatever that may be. And then the same thing for the location. You'll set that to whatever the location is of the resource group that you're trying to deploy this into. Once you've done that, you can paste this in and it'll go off and create all these resources. Now, I'm not going to do this because I already have my resources here. I have my hub, spoke 1 and spoke 2 VNets, all the VMs that are inside of them, but specifically, we're going to be focusing on everything that is inside of the hub. So I'll type into the filter here, hub, and it's going to show me all those resources that are related to the hub. So I have my hub VNet, the 2 VMs, and we see I have my hub NSG. Now, this hub NSG is where we're going to be setting up our NSG flow log. So if we click into it, and we go down to monitoring, we see NSG flow logs here. We'll click on it. We'll click create here, and this is going to bring us into creating NSG flow logs. We'll scroll all the way to the left here, and we'll begin configuring that flow log. We'll make sure that everything, all of the properties are selected here. They should pre-fill for you. It'll automatically give a name for our flow log here, and we'll leave that as default. And then it's going to ask us to use a storage account or create another storage account. We got to use a storage account that is inside of the same region as these resources. So if you don't have one, you can just choose create a new storage account, and you can create one off to the side here. I'll call this the ACG Cloud Chase NSG Demo, and it has to be a unique name globally for your storage account. Make sure to remember that. We'll click OK here. It's going to go off and create this storage account. And as soon as it's done creating that storage account, we'll be able to pull it into the configuration of our flow log here under storage accounts. So it should take just a moment, and we'll be back as soon as that's done. All right, Gurus, so we're back, and our storage account has finished creating, and we see it's pre-filled here inside of our storage accounts for us. Now, something to keep in mind is that the retention setting is only available with V2 storage accounts for our flow logs. And this created a V1 storage account, so it won't be able to set the retention. If we had the V2 storage account, we could set the retention here, and say, for example, we could put 0 for the retention, meaning that it's going to retain them indefinitely in that storage account so that we can always look back at our flow logs. If you wanted to do this differently here, you could just click on create a new storage account, and then you can make sure to select storage V2 here. And if you were to do that, you would have this retention setting available to configure, and you could put 0 so that it would keep those flow logs indefinitely. Or you could set your series of days that you want to keep it for, say 30 days, for example. But we'll proceed with how it is here this far. We'll click next into configuration, and here's where we can choose between version 1 or version 2 flow log version. Version 1 is going to give us logs for ingress and egress IP traffic flows for both allowed and denied traffic. And then version 2 is going to provide additional information like the throughput. And what we're talking about here is the bytes and packets per flow. So we'll get all the information from version 1 plus information on bytes and packets per flow. By default, we'll have version 2 here. We'll go ahead and leave that as it is. And then something we'll talk more about later is enabling traffic analytics when we get to the monitoring section of this course, because traffic analytics is something that will provide us the ability to dive a little bit deeper and visualize that information from our NSG flow logs so that we can understand what is going on inside of our networks. But we're not going to enable that for now. We'll save that for the monitoring portion of this course, and we'll just go ahead and click review and create. It'll validate this deployment here. Once it's done and passed, click create. It's going to go off and create this NSG flow log configuration for us to that storage account. And if it hasn't already, it's going to enable Network Watcher Resource Group. And as soon as it's done, we can click into the resource here, and we can see the configuration. We see the retention days here, and we could change these as we see here. If you want to retain data forever and you do not want to apply any retention policy, set the retention to 0 days. We can update the configuration here in the future if we needed to. But what we'll do at this point is we'll go ahead and back out of this, and we're going to go back into the resource group that we were just in. And in my case, that's the ACG demos. I'll click into it here, and I'll blow up this screen here, and I'll come down to that hub NSG, and we'll see under NSG flow logs that we have a resource that is configured for NSG flow log, and it's in a provisioning state that is succeeded, and it is enabled as the status. The target resource here is the hub NSG and the storage account it's sending to, and additionally, Traffic Analytics Workspace if we had that configured. We'll click into the storage account here, and if we go into the containers here, what we would see if we had traffic is those flow logs for our NSG. So what we'll do is pause here, and I'm going to pull up an NSG flow log example for us to review. Here off to the side, inside of Visual Studio Code, I have open the JSON object representing a flow log event here that I got from the Microsoft documentation. And the reason I'm grabbing this is because flow logs can take some time to actually start working and collecting data and putting that into your blob storage inside of the Azure storage account. So just to make things a little bit quicker here, rather than waiting around, if you just want to break down what an NSG flow log event looks like, we have one here, and I'll provide the resource link to this documentation that has this JSON object here for us. Now this is a version 1 flow log event right here, and what we see right out the gate is the resource ID, and this will be the resource ID of the network security group that's involved in this traffic. Then we see the version here of this NSG flow log, version 1. We see the rule that is effective for this traffic here. We see the MAC address of the NIC of the resource where this was collected. So essentially the MAC address of the NIC where this resource was collected. So the VM itself. and the flow tuple. And the flow tuple here consists of the epoch timestamp, the source IP, where the traffic came from, the destination IP, where the traffic is going to, the source port, typically going to be an ephemeral port, and the destination port, which is 3389 for RDP. And it makes sense because this user role is allowing RDP here. Then we see the protocol, it's TCP. And then we see the flow direction here is inbound. And then we see the action that took place was allow. And if this was a version 2 flow log, well, we would start to see information like packets that went through, bytes, and all of that other information that version 2 comes with. All right, gurus, so now at this point, we've successfully configured NSG flow logs. Let's head back to our slides for a quick review. All right, gurus, we're back here for our key takeaways in the slides. If you completed and followed along in that demonstration inside of your own subscription, congratulations on setting up NSG flow logs. The key things that we want to understand for NSG flow logs and take away from this demo is that NSG flow logs are enabled on a per NSG basis. We enabled this specifically on the hub NSG inside of our hub VNet. And what we were trying to do here is set up an NSG flow log so that we can capture ingress and egress IP traffic that is going through our NSG on the hub VNet. And as we saw when reviewing this, these are formatted as JSON documents that we can then review in our storage account, and we can pull these down from the storage account and take a look at them, and they'll look like the NSG flow log that we viewed in Visual Studio Code, and they'll have a similar breakdown so that we can understand what is going on in the traffic, what rules are involved, where things are going, the direction, and what actions are taking place so that we can evaluate the effectiveness of our security rules. All right, gurus, that is all my time for now. Thanks so much for joining me in this demo lesson, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.